Hello, everybody. My name is Ana Rezende, and in this podcast, I will share my transformational journey to become a health coach. In each episode, I will address a different subject that impacts our health, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Because I've learned that being healthy means being in balance. If you would like to make amazing discoveries, improve your health, get inspired, and yet find sustainable ways to live and help the planet, tune in. You are in the right place. I'm your host, Ana Rezende, and Good is What Makes You Feel Well is Mama Terra's podcast.
Toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa amiga, corre na chuva, escala a montanha, contempla a vista, transcende, levita.
In this episode, my guest is Camille Morgenstern, a storyteller, cultural curator, and the heart behind the Carioca Kitchen. Born and raised in the vibrant city of Rio de Janeiro, Camille left Brazil at 17 to study in Vermont, eventually planting roots in California. For years, her connection to home became more memory than presence, more nostalgia than reality. But in 2022, following the passing of her father, Camille was called, quite literally, back to Rio to return his ashes to the place he loved most. What felt like a tall ask turned out to be his greatest gift to her. What unfolded was more than a homecoming. It was a profound reckoning with identity, grief, motherhood, and the soul-level recognition of where we come from. That journey sparkled a powerful reconnection to her heritage, language, and culture, and birthed the Carioca Kitchen, a vibrant project sharing Brazilian stories, food, and objects with deep emotional resonance. Camille joins us today to talk about the winding road home, the quiet strength in rediscovery, and how the flavors of her childhood are helping her and others heal and belong. Please welcome Camille Morgenstern. Hi, Camille. How are you?
Good. How are you, Anna?
Welcome to Good is What Makes You Feel Well.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, me too. So I always start our conversations the same way. So I'm gonna ask you, what in this moment of your life makes you feel well?
Definitely my yoga practice is
Ooh,
by far my beacon of sanity in these times. You know, life is noisy for everyone. We're dealing with a news cycle that's unpredictable. We live in technology times, so everything is very noisy. And in my life, I am an entrepreneur. I run a business. I'm trying to grow a business, and I have two little kids. So I am in constant movement and constant noise in my life. So in that yoga room for an hour, I have my phone in a completely different space. I cannot be found. I cannot be spoken to. I get to just be in my own body. I get to connect breathing with moving. And I'm, for someone who loves wellness so much, I've never actually been good at traditional meditation. So I take the moving meditation part of yoga very seriously, and I'm able to do it in the right class, which I've found here for myself. So it moves quickly, it's difficult. I love listening to the cues, and I completely disappear into that hour of just listening to the teacher and listening to my body and in my own practice. And it's really, really magical in today's time to just be present. It's the one place I'm 100% present with what I'm doing.
that is so awesome. I think we share this passion because yoga has been my safe space for almost 12 years now, since I
Mhm.
started practicing. And I feel the same way as you do. It's just the best place for me to be present and like really deep in contact with my essence. So I love that. I love that you found that for yourself too. But tell
Yeah.
me, so this concept of feeling well, or because now you found yoga, how this concept has evolved throughout your life for you to recognize now that yoga makes you feel the way you feel.
I've been practicing yoga for, I want to say 20 years, and I have always had it as a part of a, let's call it a fitness routine. It fit into a series of other things that I did. And I always knew it made me feel very good in a few different ways. But I think as I've needed more of that calming space, I've identified it as just something that is bigger than a form of exercise. I still prefer power yoga over other methods of yoga, but now it's more because it just helps me be present when I'm challenged and trying to move through it. But to me, it's also just this idea of the space that allows for you to be yourself, and it's not competitive in any way. And it's just about listening to your body and, what does getting better at it, or what is an improved yoga practice looks like. And to me, maybe for a while that looked like being better at a pose or getting to a pose. And now I would say that it's more about getting used to the vocabulary and the cues to a point where you don't have to look up and, see what other people are doing. You're really just using the cues to stay in your own space, in your own mind, and you can close your eyes more and you can just really tune inside versus, having to use the outside as a guide. So I think just the idea that it is now kind of a full body wellness, where it feels really good for my soul. And I think that just the idea of being more comfortable gives me a lot of confidence in other areas of my life through my yoga practice. I think just, it's not about conquering that pose, but just almost having that respect of, today I'm not going to do that pose because I feel extra tired or I feel like I need more of the comfort zone yoga versus that I'm going to push myself yoga, and just learning that self-respect and presence of where you are on that particular day.
Yeah, that is the transformative power of yoga. That's what I say because it is really amazing how it changes us, right? From
Mhm.
inside out. And then the connection that we have with our body through yoga changes our level of consciousness, right? It's really, really magical. So you mentioned that you like wellness. What else beyond yoga is wellness for you?
I've always been very interested in nutrition by need and then slowly wanting to develop my own ideas and, figure out what works for me and how to help other people. I did pursue a nutrition certification mostly out of curiosity, and I never pursued it as a career, but I really wanted to deepen my knowledge of nutrition. My history, I went to my first nutritionist when I was 10, when I had some hormonal imbalances and started having my weight issues and body issues. So it was very, very early for me that I started to have somebody tell me what to eat.
Oh,
So by the time I was 25, I wanted to learn for myself and make my own decisions. And that's a whole journey of, getting there and understanding what you need and being able to put it into the practice. I think that is the disconnect for many, many, many people, is that we all kind of know what is healthy and what our body needs, but making the decisions on a daily micro basis is the challenge. So I really focus on the food side of wellness. I've worked with an Ayurvedic practitioner. I've worked with many integrative health practitioners. I've worked with many, many nutritionists over the years, and each of them taught me something and kind of gave me a guide for that moment in time. And I would say over time, none of them were actually my path, but they were all learning processes to get where I feel I am today, which is the most in tune with what my body needs and when than I've ever been before.
Wow, that is awesome. But you don't work as a nutritionist, do you?
I do
No.
not.
Okay. But you use that in your business in some way, right?
I think in a lot of ways, the things that I cook for the Carioca Kitchen are based on my beliefs of, healthy foods and healthy choices, cooking whole foods, avoiding packaged foods. And a lot of what I'm focusing on now in this project is Brazilian food and our idea of a plate composition and how you balance your plate, which was very new to me. At about 2023, I decided that my next nutritionist in life was going to be a Brazilian.
Oh.
So I started working with a Brazilian nutritionist. Her name's Carla, and she gave me a very different framework
Hmm.
for how to eat than anyone had in a very long time. I think for the longest time, people looked at me and they looked at my body and they looked at my charts and they said, you need to be eating paleo, protein, keto. Oh, keto, you're going to do so well on keto. You're definitely going to lose weight on keto. Well, yes, I did, but I don't want to live like that. So it doesn't stay that way, unless you're committing to that for life. And that's just not how I philosophically believe in eating. So when I first got my framework from Carla, I looked at it and I said to her, this is too much food. And it was really surprising. And she said, just follow it and then, we'll adjust accordingly when we meet again next month. But it was the first time I had somebody tell me, you're going to eat rice and beans every day, and you're going to have carbs again at dinner. And I think part of why her framework was so easy to follow was because for so long I had to follow these like carbless frameworks. And just to be, to me, it was so easy. It was like, I get to eat all of this delicious food that I know I love. I mean, sure. I've been in that framework for 18 months now, and it's done amazing things for my soul, my Brazilian soul to eat that way, but also for my body just to kind of adapt and change in ways that I actually did not think were possible.
Huh. Isn't that amazing that by reconnecting your body with your roots and with your culture, that made sense for everything
Yeah.
to work better and to find balance?
Yes, I think that there were a lot of other factors at play, for me around the same time that I was reconnecting with Brazil. So not only did I put that food on my plate, but I was also finding this kind of warmth and connection with people that I had missed and I didn't know what was missing in my life until I went back to Brazil and kind of realized, oh, it's that idea, the way we, hug each other and hold each other, not physically, but just emotionally, that really helped me just kind of rise again.
Yeah, tell me this whole story. How did that happen? Because now you live in San Francisco Bay Area,
Mhm.
but you were born in Brazil. Yeah, tell me the whole story.
I moved here when I was 17 to go to college, and I have been here since. And I moved to California right after college and started working here. For the beginning of my time in the US, I went back and forth during college, whenever we had a break. But once I graduated, my father also moved out of Brazil. So I stopped going home. And I didn't go home for 15 years. I stayed, I know. And I asked myself why, and it was almost like every year there was a different thing, It was like, well, this year I'm going to go to France to see my dad, and this year we can afford to travel and we want to go someplace new, and this year I'm going to have a baby, and like it just sort of kept going, and I didn't have a reason to go back. So once my dad passed away, I had to go back home. He was in France, and it's a very long story where I had to have his ashes brought to me, and I had to bring his ashes to Rio on a trip that I probably would have never taken. And at the time, I had a 2-year-old, and I had been parenting nonstop for a long time. I probably hadn't been on a trip alone in I hadn't been on it, let's call it a vacation in like 8 years. And so I went to Rio alone, so that I could properly deal with all the things that had to be dealt. And as I said that and planned it that way, I thought about the things that have to be dealt are, the bureaucracies of it, the process. And I did not think about the emotional things that have to be dealt with. So when I got to Rio on that trip, immediately you kind of feel that hot air and you feel this return. It just felt like home in a way that I completely had forgotten about. And all of those people that I hadn't seen for one reason or another, family and a lot of childhood friends and people that I didn't know how they would react to me or how we would interact. And it was almost like it felt like every person was just waiting for me to come home. And I just got this warm, warm, warm welcome. And my heart just melted into the space of where I'm from and who my people are and who are the people who know my story, who know where I was raised and how I was raised and who my family is. And I've met a lot of people here, but none of them quite kind of have that perspective. So it was this really cathartic, emotional trip that I really did need this space alone to process the emotions around, you know, it was a double grief on that
Mhm.
trip because it was the grief of, the closure for my dad, but it was also this grief of how much time have I lost, far away from my home and my people and I just heard this thing recently that said grief is love's twin sister. And that was how that trip felt. It felt like this really intense association of the sadness and the process, but then also just this like emotional love feeling of feeling loved by where I'm from and who was there and my own story that I forgot about the first half of it, the first half of my life for a very long time.
Wow. It gives me goosebumps from hearing you say that. It's such a beautiful story. It's
Thank
such
you.
a beautiful reconnection, right? With your everything.
Yeah, and it's fun. And, the story, people feel sad and, because it is about losing my dad. But if you knew him, I always say before I left, I was like, I have to do this thing for him. Like he's not here anymore. And yet I'm still, he has this giant ask of me where I have to leave my little kids and I have to leave my husband with my little kids and I have to go to Rio and I have to go on this. It was a 7-day trip, so it had to be very short. And and it felt like this tall ask that he had post-mortem to me. And by the time I ended that trip, it was his greatest gift. It was his parting gift, his greatest gift. And, my dad never pushed me to reconnect with Brazil. He didn't live there anymore. So I don't know if it's what he would have wanted but it does feel like I think he would have wanted me to find a new place that has that warmth and that comfort of a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Because during this time, you were going to see him from time to time, right? In
Hmm.
France. So you two remain close. It was not that you didn't see him for the 15 years. You were seeing each other, right?
Yes, I was close with my dad. I was very
Uh-huh.
close. I
Yeah.
would go there, and then once I had my first child, he started coming here almost every 6 months.
Okay.
So, and then COVID came.
Uh-huh.
During COVID was when I got pregnant with my second, and my dad started getting very ill. So then I didn't see him for 2 years, which was the longest in a very long time that I hadn't seen him. And I was only able to travel once my child was 1. That was when I stopped breastfeeding. As soon as I stopped breastfeeding, I was like, okay, I can now get on a plane and go see my dad. And that was early 2022. And I flew to France in an apocalyptic flight. There were like, I don't know, 15 people on a 787. It was very
Wow.
weird. It
Uh-huh.
was the it was the peak of Omicron. So nobody was going
Um,
to Europe. And, it was the time when you had to like be on a video and take a COVID test for getting on a flight. And the whole trip was very strange. And, my dad was definitely not well. And what we realized was he was waiting for us to come. So he passed away about 2 weeks after I got home. But I did get
Yeah.
to see it, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful to see it as a gift because he knew you and he knew your heart. So he was probably thinking about all the good things that you found when he made this wish, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, amazing. So then, after you got back to Rio, then you decided to start a project. Is that correct?
Yes. So after I got home from Rio, I had this feeling that I needed to make sure that 15 years would not go by before I went back. So I almost immediately booked a plane ticket to go back 3 months later,
Oh,
which to my husband was pure insanity, but he is an amazing supporter and I think he saw what was happening to me and so I booked a trip to go almost turn around and go back 3 months later. And, I just said, I need to go back and not have it be about what this was about. And I need to go back and make sure that there's a bridge that I'm building and that it wasn't like I went, it was this magical transformational connection back to my life now. Like as I flew home, I remember texting him and saying, so much is about to change. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that I had just realized that my people and my story, and now that I have kids, that they belong as a part of the story. They are Brazilian and they need to go to Brazil, and we need to think about how my culture fits into my life and my family life in a way. So I went back in June, and it was in June that I started to move things to start the Carioca Kitchen. And in the beginning, I've always wanted to write a cookbook. I've always wanted to do something with food. I just never had a why, or the thing that would be my story. There was a lot about health and wellness, but, nothing that sung to me in that way. So starting to document my family recipes and things that were Brazilian that I ate as a kid that I still have a hard time finding here made so much sense. So I started creating my little universe. And I remember in June, I met with a couple of artists to start the merchandise collection because I felt like our tables are such an important part of our food conversation. So I wanted to integrate that into the project as well. And slowly it started to develop. And in that trip in June, I saw a few more people I hadn't seen. I have a really good friend who lives in China, and she was going to be in Rio at that time. And so it was just seeing all of these people again that I hadn't seen in a long time and just solidifying that this is something that's that's big for me. And now in the last it's been 2 years. In 2 years, I ended up going to Rio 5 times,
wow.
making up for lost time, I guess.
That's awesome. So you had the whole project idea already in mind, like the cookbook and the online store, or it was kind of piecing together as you.
It is an eternal puzzle
Okay.
with pieces. I see the puzzle and what it can look like, but it is eternally evolving. I knew I wanted to write a cookbook, and what I know about cookbooks is that they take a very long time and you have to have this plan. And as my research started, the advice was start doing what you would write about. So build your platform, build your brand, build your voice. So I started with the platform. I started my Instagram account, I started my website, and then the merchandise just became, well, I'm an entrepreneur, so I was like, how do I build on this business? Because, this is just part of a bigger project. So I started the merch shop, which is also something I've always loved. I've always loved curated objects. I love those little gift stores in the cute neighborhoods, and I can just spend so much time just looking at beautiful things that humans create and that are so unique. So it was something I had never thought I would do or wanted to do, but I've had a lot of fun with it and I really enjoy the process and getting to know these artists and these people just doing with amazing stories. You know, there's this world of artists in the Carioca Kitchen shop that they're all just inspiring people who do things with their hands, which is something I so want us as a world to continue to value. So it just made sense to incorporate that and continue to evolve the cooking side, which ended up just being slower because recipe development takes time. And, you know, I can cook a lot, but then when you go into the process of writing that for other people, it just takes more time. And then when you're doing it on Instagram and you're going to be creating video content, that takes more time. So it just ended up being the thing that was slower. But the last year, I've really focused on building the platform and I was able to get it from 0 to 7K in 2024. And that felt like a very good accomplishment. And more so than just saying that number, I think what's valuable is that I've found this really incredible community of Brazilians, and it warms my soul that Meta gets something right because there's so many challenges with building a business on those platforms. But I have so many people who find my account and they send me these messages and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I almost cried looking at this because I see my Brazilian identity here and I feel at home in your content and I want to cook this and your shop is beautiful." And it just, you know, reminds me of the Brazil that I left behind and things that I don't see here. And so all of these people just sent me these really warming messages that kind of just were sort of whispers of like, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah,
And I
that is
even
what
found
happened with
people
me.
with you too.
Yeah. I found you and
Oh,
I
how you
thought,
found
oh my
me.
gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And I
Yeah.
even found people locally. You know, there was one very sweet mom who she lives, I don't know, 10 houses down. And she found me and she said, "I think you're my neighbor." And I'm from São Paulo. And so now I've met her. We went out for coffee a couple of weeks ago. And so I've made some in real life Brazilian friends out of that. But I've also made a lot of virtual friendships with people who either are from Brazil or from Rio or who have been, a lot of them will say, "I've been to Rio and I just loved it so much. And just seeing your account makes me want to go back." And then there's my personal PR campaign for Rio, where people who say, "I knew nothing about Brazil. I knew nothing about Rio. And now I really want to go because of what you're doing." So
Yeah. That is
those things.
amazing. And I have to say, it's a very potent story because to grow a community like you did in just 1 year, 7,000 followers, you said?
Mhm.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's something for you to be really proud of. It's
Thank you.
amazing. And everything you do is beautiful. It's so well done. I mean, the videos are all professional. It's perfect.
Well, I'm
And
very lucky I live with a video producer. So I do have
okay.
that going for me, which really has helped in the process. But I think I set a very high bar of what I wanted to put out. And funny enough, my business is a marketing business and I do social media management. And a lot of the dilemmas we all have as we manage accounts is like, how much do we post? Do you post all the time? Do we do enough content? And really, the Carioca Kitchen was always fed last because I always have to take care of my clients first. And then what I had left in terms of time, I would create the content. So I couldn't create that much. And what I realized was if I only create something really good, that's enough. I don't need to create three kind of half posts. If I do one very good one, it's going to find the right people. And so it was kind of by accident because I couldn't give it as much as I'm trying to give it this year. I've just been inching my way into giving it more time as time opens up. But it was kind of a, you know, I think there would be a couple of weeks where I couldn't do anything with it because I was so busy or a kid would get sick or my family would travel. And so it's, you know, that's my little social media nugget is just, you know, focus on your high level content and make sure you're creating what you would want to see because that to me it mattered that everything that I put out would perfectly reflect this brand and this universe and who I am because I feel like that brand is me. So it just was a very different approach than I've had before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're totally right. And that's how I felt. It's a it's a really deep way to connect with people, and I think you're doing it perfectly.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
feel that a lot with that account, and I think it has taught me a lot about, our societal struggles with social media and how there's so many negative aspects of social media and how we consume it. Like so many things, it's about how you consume it and what it does to you personally. But what I've learned from building this community is that there's a lot of positive that can come from having a community and kind of a virtual gathering place and a place where you see your culture reflected, because our Brazilian culture is just not visible in many places. So to just find that is really a positive for social media for me. And so I love that I created it, and I love that I have had this community kind of just happen and kind of reminded me that there is there is something positive about social media if you do it right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. With everything, right?
Mhm.
Everything has both sides. Like I said, if it's that's something you would love to see, would love to consume, then that's what you put out.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And then you have this selection of artists that you sell their merchandise in the store, and you keep developing the recipes.
I'm currently in a stage of trying to write more recipes and focus more on my cooking side. So as time opens up for me and time I can dedicate to this project, I think the priorities now are to build my kitchen confidence and my recipe writing confidence, spend more time developing those recipes, almost less focused on creating a video every time, because that creates a whole other series of hurdles to get a recipe out. So I started a Substack last year. Substack just helps writers publish themselves, and I think that it I needed a place to exercise writing, whether it's a recipe or my newsletter, but just to get more in the habit of writing. Writing is the creative that I procrastinate the most, which is odd because I love it the most. And but it also takes a lot of time and editing and reviewing time. And I think because of exactly what I just said, as far as what I put out there has to be something I would want to consume or read. I'm very hard on myself in many, many aspects of my life, but with the writing, oof, the critique and the critical self really gets very loud. So I wanted something more than Instagram captions where I could really just exercise the right to write and put things out there and just get into the habit of people reading my words and not having to overthink that so much.
Yeah. And writing is very potent way to create and heal. It has been really healing for me since I started doing it, and I just fell in love with it. And it started making me feel so well. I share this passion too. So cooking and writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you have your high standards and you were able to put out the way you really envision. That is not easy at all, but
I
it's
think what that
amazing.
means, thank you.
Yeah.
What that means in the end truly is that things don't move as quickly, uh, you know, as quickly as I want to see them move or grow, which when I say how I grew my account last year, I know I need to celebrate the things I did
Oh,
grow.
yeah, absolutely.
But so much
That
of,
was fast. That was super fast.
there's so much that I want to do, and this project feels like this creative brainstorm that never ends. And so there are so many ideas and so many things I want to do that I try to bring some focus to what area this week or this month what am I inching forward? And it really is inching forward. But then over time, you see the progress. And it's just, to me, it's been this lesson in patience, which is a virtue I work hard at developing. I joke nowadays that I use all of my patience in parenting, and I have to start using
Wait
to
till
understand my
until
own
you
creative
get to
process.
teenage years.
It's a different patience bucket, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Save it a
Um,
little bit.
yeah.
Yeah. And how old are your kids now?
My kids are 4 and 7.
Okay. Yeah. The fun age. This age is awesome.
But I think about how much, you know, what would this journey look like if I weren't a parent? And so much of myself changed by becoming a parent and becoming a mom. And, when you asked me about wellness, and I think one of the things I could talk about is how having kids really changed my view on wellness. And I think that it allowed me to really want to take care of myself, starting with pregnancy. And it's funny because I know a lot of people, don't feel great when they're pregnant. And I felt amazing when I was pregnant. And when I think about it, it's a few different things. I think it was the first time in my life that I wasn't worried about what my body looked like. I wasn't worried about losing weight. I was really focused on nourishing myself in the best of ways because now I was doing it for someone else. It was also the first 9-month period of my adult life that I did not consume alcohol. So I think that really contributed. I slept better and I felt great. And I didn't tie those things together until later when I got more sober curious. And then I thought, I wonder if that had something to do with why pregnancy felt so good for me, and moving. And I did a lot of prenatal yoga, and I think I just had this sort of life challenge as a woman of being frustrated with my body. And then after pregnancy, I had so much respect for what my body could do. I just felt this idea that I just had a really healthy baby and my body did that. And I've had all of these complaints about my body forever. And now I just feel this kind of empowerment of what I'm capable of, and, just kind of a different way of thinking about, health. And
How magical that is. This body is capable of creating
yeah,
another life. It's a very different perspective. And then you just enjoyed those 9 months.
I did. I think everything was great until the very, 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 very end. I did my power yoga until 38 weeks with my first baby, and then when you just get to that size, and I just had this heartburn, and the things that you cannot avoid at the end when you just like I just feel very uncomfortable. But up until that point, I really did enjoy being pregnant.
So now that you have realized the connection of alcohol with sleep and how well you felt and all that, how is your relationship with alcohol now?
That is an interesting question, and it's one that has changed a lot in the last 2 years as part of kind of my newfound wellness program, working with the Brazilian diet, and then just a few different elements of work. So my marketing business focuses on wine and
Mm.
wine clients. I am surrounded by wine all the time. And the funny thing is that when I started working in wine is when I started to challenge my ability to be moderate. Not that I was challenged, the opposite. I started to become more manageable because you realize this is now my job, and you are surrounded by wine all the time. And a lot of times you are still at work. So, it's a different environment. So I had to learn this moderation. Prior to working in wine, I lived in San Francisco. We were all a group of 20 somethings. We loved going out at night. We loved going to shows. I've just had this life that's been, it's a given that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and possibly Sunday, I'll be drinking wine at a show at the park. Or so it was just this thing that was in my life constantly since I was really young. So when I started working in wine, I saw some examples of people who went too far. And I think that was a quick awakening of, okay, now that it's readily available, there has to be some management. And pregnancy was probably when I kind of had that hard stop for the first time in my life. And then I think I kind of went back to habitual wine drinking after I had my baby. And, I live in an area that's also very used to drinking wine, and it's just part of our culture here. So it's kind of hard to avoid in many ways. And then I think it was somewhere last year as I was kind of digging into wellness more. And, I was in this process with this nutritionist and I was starting to lose weight. And I was also feeling really low energy. And I could feel that I was using alcohol sometimes to manage some stress and just saying, oh, it's 4 o'clock on a Saturday and I've been parenting all day. Let me have some wine that might bridge me to bedtime. And then realizing that, life gets really, really stressful to the point where I dealt with my parent passing away. We moved cities. It was post-pandemic. I had 2 little kids. And I had this moment where I said to myself, you know what? There is not enough wine in the world. So the answer isn't more, it's none. And I went through a couple of rounds of doing The Naked Mind, which is just a book that for 30 days, you kind of ask a different question a day from her book on your relationship with alcohol. And my husband and I both did it. And in the end, we had the same conversation of there's a lot in here that challenges how we think and how we behave. And then there's the point where she says, do you actually really like alcohol? And we both said, yeah, we both really do love wine and we really do love wine and food. And so for us, we didn't want to enter a sober life for sure. We just wanted to moderate and kind of integrate it in a way that was way more balanced. So I probably drink now, I don't know, 80% less than I ever did before, just as a way to kind of make peace with that. I don't want to say goodbye forever. I really love this trade. I work with clients who make amazing wine, who tell amazing stories about the land and the agriculture and the terroir and the culture behind wine of, centuries drinking wine with food. And I really romanticized that piece. And then I realized if I keep the piece that I respect and love as a food person and I can manage that, then that's how we move forward. And so that's how we have moved forward with just being very picky. I'm very picky now about if, when, and what I will drink. And it's really helped in so many ways. I mean, it's almost as if you made a column of what are the benefits of drinking, what are the benefits of not drinking. I mean, the benefits of drinking for me are that I'm slightly more social. And then for not drinking, it's just sleep better, my energy is higher, mood regulated, no more food cravings are curbed. I think it really messes up my blood sugar. I have wonky blood sugar if I don't eat or if I eat a lot of sugar. So alcohol really can throw my whole body for a curve. And so it really helps with that. And it kind of worked for my work and my project when I wanted to grow the Carioca Kitchen and I didn't have hours in the day. And what I realized as I kind of read about entrepreneurs, I'm like, how do they do that? How do they do all these things? And I found this really common thread that I thought was interesting that a lot of them focus on self-care and wellness, and a lot of them are alcohol-free. The majority of kind of the entrepreneurs we all admire and look up to kind of lead this very wellness-oriented lifestyle. And now I know why, because you end up finding more hours in your day.
Absolutely. That is a very inspiring story. It's a very good one to share. Very good one. So what's the name of the book again? Naked?
The Naked Mind.
The Naked Mind. I'm gonna check that one. Yeah.
Her name is Annie. I can't remember her last name, but her first
Okay.
name is Annie.
I'll have that in the show notes so people can check it too. So, do you mind to share the framework of your nutritionist?
No, I'd love to.
Okay.
You can put her info in the show notes as well. She works out of Rio, and sees Brazilian clients. Carla Faedo. She gave me a framework that was, to me, it's funny. At the same time, my child was learning about nutrition in his kindergarten class, and he comes home and he says, oh, I'm missing a fruit on my plate. And I kind of thought about it and I thought, that's funny because that's kind of like how my plate is now built. And it's almost like after all these years of, all of these practitioners putting me on these like a high protein, excluding food group framework, then here was somebody telling me, this is your plate. There's a carb, there's a legume, there's a vegetable, there's a salad, and there's a protein. And it almost makes so much sense. But we have gotten so distracted with the options and the optimal and how we are all so different. I have like a very, do you want me to actually get into exactly what?
As much as we want.
So, breakfast has a protein focus because for me that made sense knowing my blood sugar is all wonky. So a lot of times it just has like a smoothie or eggs, high protein bread, coffee, of course, we're Brazilian. I eat a lot more fruit. Fruit is a food group. For so long, I was like, why eat the fruit? I mean, it's not like it's going to replace a dessert and it's kind of a carb. And is it doing anything for me? I don't know. I guess I don't need to eat fruit. And I know I see your face.
Yeah.
And she said, you're going to eat two different fruits every single day. So now and she's like, there are a million reasons you should eat fruit, Camille. And so I welcomed fruit back. And then for my lunch plate, it's a very traditional Brazilian prato feito, which is kind of our composed plate, right? So the rice and the beans and that's when I said to her, this is so much food. For lunch, I have a salad and I have like a chicken salad and a piece of toast. And she's like, no, like you're gonna eat this plate of food and then we'll see. And then for dinner, it was also something really approachable for me, which is, with kids, it's a lot easier to have the plate composition approach, because then I can say I made chicken, I made broccoli, and I made quinoa. And, my kids would eat the chicken and they would eat like one piece of broccoli. But if you're trying to make kind of a complicated dish or a stew, that's harder for a family because then everybody has to buy into the one thing. So her framework actually worked really well for me as a family too. It seems so simple when I say it, but there were those elements of just focusing on the composition. There was a quantity element, but the way she positioned it made it easier. I don't really have to weigh things. It was just kind of take a tablespoon, like a regular spoon, and give yourself two spoonfuls of something, or two spoonfuls of rice and two spoonfuls of beans. And for a while I did weigh my protein because I had been overeating protein for so long that I realized, oh my God, I've been eating so much protein that I have no idea what a portion of protein is. And so that part helped me kind of train what that should look like on a plate. And she is also a really fun person, Carla, who knows life happens. So she had just a really great approach that was, and I said, what about chocolate? I'm not a crazy sugar person, and she said, well, we'll put in your therapeutic 25 grams of dark chocolate with your afternoon coffee every day. You can have it, you cannot have it, but just don't eat it at night. So it was shifting certain things to put it in a place that it belonged. And then I asked her the question, since we were just on the topic. I said, so how much wine can I have?
What
And
did she say?
she said, as a health practitioner, I have to tell you that there is no amount of alcohol that is healthy for me to recommend to you. However, as a human in this world, I will say just try to be moderate and try to do that in isolation. So not do the like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, try to be moderate and then get back on the wagon. If you want to have wine on Friday, great. That's life. Go out, have wine, but then come home and the next day, like go back to your plan. So it was just about avoiding this just complete weekend derailment, which is what I realized is also a challenge. It's easier, right? Monday to Friday, you're following this thing and it's so easy and so great. And then the weekend comes and you're like, well, now I'm going to go out and I don't know what to order. And there's wine. And then it's Saturday and we're going to brunch and my kids want pancakes. And then all of a sudden you've realized it's been 3 days of you completely ignoring what was recommended to you. So I worked really hard to like make the weekend pick where I was going to kind of curve out, and then just get back on the wagon.
It's important to be gentle, right? And because this is a transition. Like you said, you have been doing this since you're 10. That is unbelievable, right?
It is. And so when I met with Carla, I don't remember meeting her to want to lose weight. I was like, my kitchen is a mess. I'm not feeling great. I've been sick for 4 months over winter. I just feel like my body is just not working optimally. And then she asked me, and she said, or how much do you want to weigh? And I just, and I was like,
I don't want to go there. I
well,
have been
because I
there.
felt what I really thought was over the last couple of years of becoming a mom, we gratefully live in a world that has a lot of body positivity, and I feel like am finally okay. I'm okay with what I look like. But, and I've tried to lose weight for my entire life, and I don't really lose weight. So, but okay, fine. You want a number. Here's how much I weighed when I got married. And when I got married, I was on Weight Watchers and I was working out every single day. And I was working towards being one size for one day. And let me tell you, it was that one day. And then after that, it just went back to trying to live normally, right? So I gave her this number. And now I'm actually 35 pounds under that number. And it was a number I never thought I would see again.
Wow. What a result. Oh my gosh. Of course, it's not only that. Like you said, it's a combination of things that led you to this. But it's amazing how when we are not focusing on an outcome, the outcome comes.
I know. I think about that often. I had finally given up and I just wanted to feel better and not be, sick and, have to include Robitussin and Dayquil on my regular plan. But at the same time, I was going through this emotional transformation of reconnecting with Brazil. There's another factor, which was I was finally sleeping again. So I had gone from what kid one who never slept. And as soon as he started sleeping, baby two was born. So for about 5 years, I didn't sleep through the night. So that was the time when I was starting to feel like, okay, I can sleep now and recover, use that to my advantage. And then there was the sober curious phase, and these were all kind of layering on top of each other. And then I rediscovered yoga kind of at the same time. I had gone back to some high workouts. I was doing interval workouts, and then I had an injury, and I just decided, well, I guess I'll go to yoga because I can't go to this high workout. And I think my cortisol really needed that. And so I switched to yoga, swimming, walking, and gave up on the high intensity workouts that everyone says women over 40 should be doing. And I just kind of learned there's the what we should be doing, and then there's the what we love doing, and maybe just doing the things we love yields better results.
Yeah. And your body responded. Now that you are relaxed, I'm going to feel good and look good.
Yeah, I guess you could say it was the layering of all the things and seeing the response. And then because she had built a plan that was so easy to stick to, it wasn't like, I'm going to do a Whole30 for 30 days or there's a keto for 60 days. And then you enter, there was no expiration date. It was
Yeah.
just, this is how I eat now. And
Yeah.
so I just kept going, and it is so easy to eat and adapt. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said, "Oh, I had pizza, so my diet's out the window." And I'm like, "Well, if you really think about it, pizza, you're eating like your carb, you have your cheese, your protein. If you eat a salad, there's your vegetable. Like if you don't eat too much, I mean, you can kind of you can fit almost anything into her framework if you balance your plate and your quantities, and so it makes it really easy to stick to it."
I love that. I love the idea of going back to the basics and balancing everything. That is what I believe works for everybody. Oh my gosh, I just love this conversation. Very good. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Oh my gosh.
You're so welcome. I really loved it too. There's so much of this is in my head, and I started my wellness newsletter on Substack to start talking about some of these stacking elements that added up to, because what happened with my Instagram was between January and December when I grew, if I wanted to repurpose the content, or people would find me and go in the back, and then all of a sudden I would get a message that's like, you look very different now.
What
And
happened?
and people were like, wow, like she's like, I know we're not supposed to say this. Great, you look amazing. You've lost all this weight. Like, what's going on? And so I got a lot of these questions and comments, and I started the wellness newsletter to kind of unpack slowly what was happening because I didn't want my Instagram account to become the girl on Instagram who lost all this weight. It was never about that, and I didn't want it to be about that. But it became something I couldn't avoid talking about. If you're comparing a video from 6 months ago to now, it's really noticeable. So I've been wanting to unravel these conversations around what I'm doing for my wellness, and it always feels like a lot to put in one place. So the newsletter would be one at a time, like each element that happened and how maybe someone can get something out of it that would guide them as well.
Yeah, that's perfect because it's all part of your emotional healing, right? So it is all part of the process. Yeah, so many pieces that you were able to put together. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good now, when I look back at when I first started, it was right around after we moved here and we left San Francisco and we bought a house. And so it felt like this time when I finally could find a routine. It felt like a settling. It was time to settle a little bit and I could start taking care of myself again. My dad had already passed away. My two kids were getting a little bit older. So it felt like a moment where I could start kind of taking care of myself again and making time for exercise. And even before I went to Rio the first time, I kind of started the motions of taking care of myself again. But when I look back, I didn't think I was not doing well. But when I look back, I think I went through a really, really hard 2 years. 2021 and 2022 were really, really, really hard in so many ways, emotionally, having two kids. I always say, why didn't anybody tell me it would be 8 times harder?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is what I tell everybody. Should I have the second kid? And I said, it's not just plus one. If you are not sure, don't have it.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I don't think I realized, I was like, we're already in this parenting world and maybe they'll play together. I was so wrong. I was so wrong about what that would be like. So coming
Yeah.
out of losing my last parent, leaving the city I'd lived in for 17 years into a new community, getting out of the very little years of fragile baby and breastfeeding and not sleeping, and then just realizing that was a really, really hard time. And it was nice to enter. And even as you enter, you don't think, oh, times are better and they were better. Like, it almost like hindsight 2020. You have to look back at the whole story that just unraveled over time to say, I could not see how hard that was because when you're a parent and you're doing all these things, you're just surviving and you're like, I made it through the day. Everybody is healthy and everybody, and I think I didn't even put myself on a list for a long time of who needs what. I was on the list. It's like we have this kid needs this kid needs that, the house needs this, and my clients need this. And I was very much not on that list. So being able to slowly put myself in a place of, yeah, maybe if I take care of myself, I'll be able to better care for all of these things that I care for.
Yeah.
Really kind of changed the attitude.
Yeah. Nobody can pour from an empty cup, right?
That's right.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now tell people where they can find you and the Carioca Kitchen and all that to buy your
You
beautiful products because they are unique, colorful, full of joy, and made by artists that I'm sure I'm gonna love them all.
Yes, I have a mix of Brazilian artists and global artists. So I kind of curate the collection and make my recipes. I would say to anyone new, start on my Instagram at the Carioca Kitchen, the Carioca Kitchen for us Brazilians. And from there, you can find my website that links to my shop. You can go to my Substack and sign up for the newsletter and watch some of the videos and
The amazing videos. So well
get
done.
get some Brazilian inspiration for your life.
Yay. Oh, thank you so much. It was so lovely to connect. I hope this conversation would help lots of people.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I think
Oh, thank you.
you have really amazing guests and you're doing really beautiful work, and I feel very honored to be among them.
Thank you. I will receive that. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you guys so much for listening. It means a lot to me that you chose to be here. To help Mama Terra's mission of making the world a disease-free place for generations to come, you can follow the show, write a review, or talk to your friends about it. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. Every week, I craft good health and wellness tips, recipes, and book recommendations with love and care, just for you. My intention is to give you information and resources to help you make good choices and feel well. Find the link to subscribe in the show notes. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you again for being here. We have lots of new episodes coming up, so stay tuned. And remember, good is what makes you feel well.
Transcende levita, toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa amiga, corre na chuva, escala